All right, guys, welcome back to another episode of Too Many Hobbies Podcast. I'm your host, Brian Althorpe. Today, we have the first returning guest, my buddy, Brian Evans. Brian, welcome to the show.
Thanks for having me.
Hey, thanks for coming on. You're always welcome, but you never want to come on.
I don't think that's the way it goes, actually. That's fake news. Fake news.
Your show was pretty popular last time talking about your duck boat, so that worked out pretty nicely.
Oh, great.
Yeah. So to start this off, we're going to talk about your newest project. So you got rid of your 21-foot Mariner, and what did you end up buying now?
So I bought a 1996 Bluefin Spectrum, which I believe was made by a tracker. It's a completely welded, just shy of 20-foot boat, and it was set up for catfishing rivers, and I gutted the whole thing and made it into a duck boat machine, I guess you could say. It's about as close as you can get to a nice welded boat that these guys are running without spending a bunch of money.
Yeah, I mean, it's basically a poor man's duck water, Great Lakes.
Yeah.
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 It was probably the last one was a little bit more of the poor side, though. This is a lot more sturdy. Yeah. I think that this one that you built's way nicer, even though it's short.
Agree. Yeah, it's crazy how much you shorten 1 foot off the bow, but I think I gained almost like a 1 foot in beam width, which is better than I think having a 1 foot off the bow.
Right. Yeah, I think that you mentioned, like, because when we were in my boat, the first time that you were on my boat when we were hunting it, because it's basically the same hull. Mine might be a couple inches longer, I don't know, but it's wider than what your Starcraft was, and it opens up the whole thing. It's crazy. I mean, mine has more storage and stuff on the sides. Like, you don't have, yours is just completely gutted.
Yeah,
so it's
I've got
way
very little.
Yeah.
Yeah.
You don't have a deck up front. You don't have the side storage. You don't have any of that.
No, one of the cool things that I did do though is put the floor storage unit or the floor storage and then up in the bow, which has been phenomenal because I think the Mariner's deck spacing or underneath was just, I couldn't even throw an anchor in there, and having an anchor under the floor is really nice.
Oh yeah. Yeah. And your old, I think that I mean, the floor seemed like it was pretty close, but I think that in the Mariner, the stringers go like with the boat instead of cross.
I think you're right. Yeah.
And I think that's why you can't really do it. Like, you might be able to put a boat or a gas tank under there, but like if you try and put storage, it's too shallow, I think.
Yeah, I would agree.
And I think that the gunnels on both of ours are taller than the Mariner.
Yeah, I feel a lot better about that than on the Mariner. I think that's great for, like, I don't know, your shallow lakes and such, but this boat makes me feel a little bit more comfortable about going out on Erie and wherever else, just because I know it can handle a little bit more and not fall apart.
Right. But then how did you change the blind design compared to your old one? Because now it's a little more shallow. Like, you sit deeper in the boat, so you don't have it sticking up as high.
Yeah, and I learned a lot from the last blind. I think the last time we talked, I talked about how a guy named John made the last blind, and then I tried to copy some ideas off of it, and then found out a lot of stuff that I didn't like. So then this one, I was able to overhang the blind over the front, so now if it rains, it's rolling out of the boat, and it's shallower. One, because the gunnel's higher, but two, I wanted it lower so you could actually fit a layout on top of it and get it out of there a little bit easier than what we were dealing with up at Houghton Lake.
Yeah, we had some, I mean, it's like, it worked fine. Like, it was just, we had to lift the boat high to get it in it.
Yeah.
And if you don't have a super light layout, then it makes it a little more of a pain. But also, like, because the boat was narrower, there wasn't as much room in between the console and the gunnel. So, like, I think even if you had the higher blind frame now, it would still be a little easier to navigate getting that in and out.
Yeah, I think you're right. And that was one of the goals, because eventually I would like to have a layout and have it easier for everybody to lay out, shoot out of that boat. But I don't know. It's a much better setup than the other one. This one's completely welded. I didn't use any of the maker pipe fittings that I did on the previous. Right. And I feel a lot better about a fully welded frame than I do with the maker pipe stuff.
Yeah, so. Well, and the fact that you can weld and do it yourself makes it a lot easier.
and cheaper. Yeah.
Who'd have thought? Yeah.
Yeah.
Because you're using all, is it 3/4 inch EMT conduit?
Same kind of setup as last time. It's the main part that bolts to the gunnels and everything else is 3/4, and then the lids, I guess you would kind of like that's a trifold almost. Those are 1/2 inch rigid. And then I had to put a stud in the center because you got it. It's like, oh, I don't even remember, 14-foot long. So you had to get 2 10-foot sections and weld it together. So I put a stud in the center for rigidity, and then welded it all together.
Okay. I mean, it turned out fantastic. And I guess the big change that you made too is that you didn't go all green this time. You did a green and gray mix.
Yeah, it was 1 gallon bay gray, the Parker Bay Gray, to 1 quart hunter green. I think that hunter green was good, but it didn't blend in very well to the places that I typically hunt on the lake. Especially when I went up to Lake Huron, it stood out like a sore thumb because that water up there is almost crystal clear compared to Lake Erie. So
yeah, but I mean, even when you're hiding against the rocks and stuff, like a green boat does stick out way more than a gray boat.
Yeah. So for anybody that would be interested, I think that bay gray mixing a little bit of that green is phenomenal. It gives you a perfect amount of green tint in there to blend in with whatever you're doing.
Right. Yeah, if you have any sort of vegetation behind you, at least it helps.
Yeah.
Yeah. No, I mean, I think that boat, and then you use the same motor. You swap that over.
Yeah, so that was the Suzuki 115 that I purchased last year that I put on the Mariner, and then swapped it onto this one with the Atlas jack plate that I bought around the same time, which hopefully that comes into play quite a bit more than it did last year. That's kind of an expensive thing to not really use.
Yeah.
So.
Yeah, I mean, the jack plate, well, I mean, like, you don't have, like, the full transom. So, like, the jack plate is nice because, like, you can kind of mess with that. And, like, I think that, I don't know that it would work so well on my boat. It might. I don't know. I haven't really messed around with the jack plate to even see if I'd like it or not. I don't go as shallow as you do, though. Like, if I'm going somewhere shallow, I just take a different boat.
Yeah. It makes it a little bit more versatile in getting in where you want to. But I think I am getting to the point now where I'd rather not mess up my stuff and just be safer with taking a marsh boat out than taking a big boat. So, yeah, it's a fine line.
Thing too, though, like, there's some places that we go and it's like, I've had it before up in Michigan where, like, I come around a corner and it's like all of a sudden my boat hitting bottom. And it's like, generally in spots where, like, I would be deep enough that it wouldn't matter.
Yeah.
So I don't even know that I could react fast enough with a jack plate to be like, yeah, if I, like, as soon as I start hitting and then jack it up, it's like, I don't think it's going to matter.
The damage has probably been done already.
Yeah.
I think one of the first things I can think of is, I don't know, two or 3 years ago when I went up to St. Clair, I had a 90 horse Johnson on the Mariner, and I would have to trim that thing all the way up to get all the way across the bay. And I remember thinking to myself, man, if I had a jack plate, I would be there in record time instead of me going 30 mile an hour up a channel and then having to slow down to 4 mile an hour all the way across the bay.
Right. Yeah. The one thing that I think about in that case, like with the jack plate, I'm sure, like, when I was with Sean and we were up in Saginaw Bay, his jack plate kept having issues. And I was like, yeah, I just don't want to have any issues with the jet. Like, his state, like, was all the way up and it wouldn't come back down. So I'm like, there'd just be it'd be my luck that just, like, one thing that I put on the boat then would screw me. You know what I mean?
What kind of plate did he have on? Do you remember?
Same one. You that Atlas.
Man. Oh, now I'm scared.
Well, I mean, it's just that's owning a boat, I guess.
Yeah.
Like, there's just stuff that goes wrong. And it's like, for me, I think the jack plate would be sick, but I just don't hunt shallow enough areas. Like, I feel like there's a couple places that we can both think of that, like, that jack plate's coming super handy, but I don't generally go in there. So
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well put.
Yeah. And it's like, I mean, otherwise, like all the stuff that, I mean, the jack plate is sick. Don't get me wrong. I'm sure that it's awesome. And, but I mean, like the boat blind, all the storage that you put into this one, the new, you have a bigger console on it too.
Yeah, I had a guy custom make me an aluminum console. I want to say it was either 1/8 inch or 3/16 entirely, but he welded that thing up, which old Lakeshore Charters Jared ended up giving me the contact for him. He did phenomenal work. So everything in that boat now, except for the transom, is aluminum, and the transom was done right before I bought it. So I figured I won't have to mess with that for at least 7 years or so.
Yeah, now that you say that too, I almost forgot that the whole floor you had laser cut too.
Yeah, luckily, I'm at my place of work, and I have a plasma table with CAD abilities, so I drew it all up in CAD, sent it over to a machine factory or a machining place nearby my work, and they had it water jetted for me, and I picked it up and dropped it right in, and I didn't have to do any trimming at all. It just worked perfect.
That's so sick. I mean, like the nice thing about that is it's lighter than the wood floor, and you will most likely never have to replace that. You're not going to keep the boat long enough, but you'll never have to replace it.
That's fair. The ultimate goal is to be able to get into a Great Lakes duck boat, but
yeah,
that's way down the road.
Oh yeah, yeah. Well, you just have a track record of building cool boats, using them for a year or two, and then getting rid of them.
Funny enough, the boat that you took pictures of 3-4 years ago, that gray 17-foot boat, I saw that going down the highway 2 or 3 weeks ago, and he didn't strap the lid down. So he was going down Route 2 with the lid up, and the whole time I'm thinking like, oh, yeah, I was like, dude, this thing's going to break, and he has no idea what he's doing.
I mean, you got to think that if he's doing that now, he hasn't strapped that thing down since he bought it.
No, which is great because it hasn't broke yet. So.
But yeah, or maybe it's broke 5 times and he just keeps going. Why is it breaking?
Yeah, he hasn't thought about it, huh?
Yeah, he's just like, I can't imagine why this keeps breaking. And he doesn't.
Yeah. But it's cool seeing, builds that I've done going down the road and knowing that they're still getting used the way that they're supposed to. So
yeah. Well, I think that like just in the whole waterfowl in general, like people like seeing old boats be turned into duck boats.
Oh yeah.
You think of that Tom Carthels or whatever his name is, like that. That dude just pumps out old Islanders like it's nobody's business.
Yeah, it's crazy to me too that people will put so much money into one of those things, and it's always going to leak because of those rivets. But it's crazy that they put so much money into a transom that they're never going to have to touch again, just to have to touch every one of those rivets underneath the boat.
Yeah, I mean, but maybe they don't leak as much as yours did.
I remember though when I was on a trip last year, I came back to the ramp and there were 2 Korthals boats up going onto the trailers. And I was like, oh man, this is great. I wanted to see one of these in person. And the dude puts it up on the trailer, goes to pull it out. And when the boat angles up, his bilge pump kicks on and there's gallons shooting out the side of this boat. And I'm like, oh yeah, this guy's got problems too. So it made me feel a lot better.
I mean, yeah, that's fair. I mean, with the old boat, like you're just going to have rivet issues. Like, knock on wood, I haven't had, mine's riveted where it's like, I haven't had issues with rivets, but like, I feel like, I also think that like the inside storage of mine keeps the hull so tight that it doesn't move around a lot. Like mine's pretty much tied in all the way around.
Yeah.
It's I feel like maybe, but like I think that if like it must be, but like I feel like if you start taking all that, it's the same way as like if you bought a 14-foot boat with them 3 seats in there, and then you take out the 2 front seats, that thing starts twisting, and then everybody's like, "Oh yeah, I'm gonna put all this stuff in there," and then they go out on the lake and it's twisting, and then a month, 2 months later, they're like, "Oh, I have a leak in here. There's a crack," and it's like, This boat's not built to be. That's what keeps the boat together.
Yeah. It's funny you should say that. I haven't had it happen yet, but the 16-footer marsh boat that I had, I ripped the center seat out of, and you can tell that I've ripped it out because when you're going and you start hitting just a little bit of chop, that whole boat shakes.
Yeah.
So
they'll do that. But I mean, like when you start taking them Islanders that have that huge front cabin, take that whole thing out. What do you think's going to happen?
Exactly what it is happening, and just leaking, is what it is. Have a good bilge.
That's 3.
Yeah, well, I've been there, done that.
No, I just wanted to at least touch on that because that boat that you built has turned out so nice, and it's just thanks. Like, yeah, no, I mean, it's a really cool boat. I'm excited to see it in action, and the way that you have it set up now, like, it turned out so nice.
Well, thank you, and I hope it performs as well as it looks, because every time I look at it, I get really proud. I'm like, hey, I made that thing.
All right, well, moving on from the boat, the next thing, the whole reason that we wanted to have this talk was that, we've had talks we've been planning trips for a couple of years now. You plan bigger trips than I do, but I wanted to at least touch on, like, people that want to go out of state and hunt, people that want to, like, set up these trips with, like, multiple people. Like, you do it in big groups. But so when you're starting at the beginning of the season or in the off season, looking at, like, what trip you want to do, what is, like, your first step of getting the group together and, like, talking about it? Or, like, do you guys just throw a dart at a map and say, this is where we want to go hunt?
I got to backtrack a little bit on you here. So I was invited 5 years ago to go to Kansas by a buddy of mine named Shane, which you, of course, know, and I would consider you guys buddies or whatever. But
Shane's in the intro of this show.
Yeah.
So, oh, yeah.
It's so he invited me out to Kansas for 10 days. And I think there were 8-10 of us, something like that. It might have been 8. So, we drove out there. It's 16, 18-hour drive, and we get out there and we're having a blast. And we get done and we get back, and basically as soon as you get back, we're like, okay, we're going to go back to Kansas again. Let's discover the dates and whatever. We'll talk about it further down the road in July. So this would have been 4 years ago. We're like, okay, let's get ready for the Kansas trip. Well, Kansas no longer had water, and they were talking about a law that said that out-of-state hunters can only hunt 3 or so days out of the 7, and we weren't going to drive all the way out there to hunt 3 days and then have to worry about a guide or whatever else, because we do a lot of freelance. So I want to say, and the first year that we ended up doing it, we decided we're all just going to go to Lake St. Clair after talking with you. Mm-hmm. It's close. The opportunities were good. As for the guys that we had going with us, it was basically the same crew that we had from Kansas going to St. Clair. So when we talked with you, you said St. Clair was a good opportunity. It was close. It was almost a last-minute decision because Kansas was completely dry. I think we had a month, and we were like, okay, we need to book a house. So we get on VRBO, we get on Airbnb, and we're looking for a place that can hold 10 people, which is kind of difficult, especially last minute. You've got 2-3 dogs. So we end up finding this first house because we couldn't find it. Like, we lost too much time. We couldn't find one house that was good for 10 days. So we booked the first house, and come to find out, I guess we weren't allowed to have dogs. That was a little bit of a fiasco, but we ended up getting into this second house, which was phenomenal. It had like a 200-foot dock off the backside. It slept all 10 of us comfortably. You get to dock the boats out back, go out, hunt, come back, and then, have a good time around the fire and do it all the next day. And the idea after Kansas was, okay, we'll go to Michigan, and then we'll go find somewhere else. So you look on your social media, you try to talk with guys and say, hey, where's a good spot to go? And then you got your typical guys that are hunting timber, which none of us have the knowledge of hunting timber. I think we're a little bit more comfortable with marshes and lakes. But we go to St. Clair, we get done, we get back, we talk about what we want to do next. We somehow get in contact with a guy on social media that says, hey, Wisconsin's a pretty good opportunity. You'll have a lot of puddle ducks, a lot of divers. So we're like, okay, cool. We'll look for a house. We found a house. It was right on the Mississippi River. Pretty much the same situation where it was almost all the same guys from Kansas, from St. Clair to Wisconsin. And, we invite a couple other guys to see if they want to chip in and make this trip as cheap as possible. So, it's like $100 a guy, $150 a guy, whatever, for 10 days. We get all the way to Wisconsin and the weather just hasn't hit yet. So we had terrible luck. I want to say that we, unfortunately, probably made the hen or the Buffy situation much worse for the next generation, because when you're not seeing anything other than Buffies, you shoot Buffies. So, we cooked up Buffies. They were great. Luckily, we had a good cook in the crew that made them taste pretty nice. But after Wisconsin, we really got let down, and we were like, I don't know where we're going to go. Kansas still doesn't have water. We've heard the rumors about only being able to hunt 3 days in Kansas, but we can't find anything in laws. So why not go back to St. Clair this year and see what happens? This year has been a cluster with trying to get those same guys together, whether or not family life has changed or whatever. So we're inviting people who are in our close friends groups and like, hey, this is a bigger trip, 7 days, 10 days, whatever. You guys want to come and do this whole trip with us? And your guys dropping like flies. I don't even remember how many guys we lost. And then it turned into guys only coming up for a couple days. So what originally was we're going on a long trip is now turning into something a little bit different, which is more difficult for the guys who were kind of leading this whole situation. But I think finding the spot to go is so centralized around social media and your inner cliques that's really the only way you can figure out how to travel hunt anymore and do freelance instead of going guiding, which is extremely expensive.
Right.
So,
well, and like you touched on it there too, if you want to make it worth your while, you want to go for like a week. If you're going to the Mississippi River, like if you're going for a week, you might expect that you have 3 good hunts. You're going to spend at least a day or two trying to find spots to hunt. The weather's not going to be good for a couple of those days, and you might have, 3-4 hunts that are good. And if you're hunting morning and afternoon, it's going to be, it's a lot.
It is.
Also find, like, if you're trying to find a big enough group, like, I think it's easy to find like 4 guys. That's like, okay, for a week, we're going to take one boat. We're going to stay in one place, and like, we're just going to hunt together all week. But if you like start splitting it up, like I know St. Clair this year because I'm coming with, but I'm not staying the whole time either. So it's like, if you try and split it up, then it's like, I feel like it makes things pretty difficult to like, not only from a planning standpoint, but like paying for the Airbnb or the VRBO, like that makes it tough.
Yeah, it does. And we got so lucky this year. I somehow got the number from the same lady from the house 3 years ago, whatever it was. And I gave her a call. I said, hey, this is what we're looking at. Is there any chance you're available the first week in November? And she's like, yeah, not a problem. And she helped us out financially, and we paid the first half up front, and the second half has to be due by whatever, a month before. It does get a little bit tricky when you start adding people in and then they leave. But I think one of the really big things is we've got so many guys that are invested into this sport or this hobby that we all have boats. So they're all coming up. And no matter at what point we have 12 guys or 6, 7 guys, we'll have the rigs there, and it's not a big deal. It's more just who's going to be with who, where's the food, because when you go out and hunt all day, you're going to be hungry, and sleep, of course, which isn't too important to me. I can sleep on a floor and be perfectly fine.
Yeah, I mean, well, and like when you've got enough people up there, it's like a couple people could go out, get spots, and then if you got enough rigs, you just go meet them out there. If somebody really needs to sleep, but it's like you don't really want to sleep. Like when you start getting on those trips, it's like, I mean, when we do it at Houghton Lake, it's like kind of one of those deals where we're layout hunting, so like you don't really need to get up super early, but at the same time, like you want to get up early enough so you can be set up in time. But it's like, I mean, any other trip, like even when I was traveling last year with Sean, it's like we have spots that we're hunting, like either they're people that he knows or it's places we've gotten permission on where it's like we're not really hunting public that we need to get up super early. But like when we were on the Mississippi River, we did. Like we had to get up at like 2 a.m. and it's like there's so many people out there, but it's the same concept, the same deal as you guys were like we got there and the weather sucks. So it was kind of like, what are we even doing here? But yeah, it's like, I mean, as far as freelancing goes, it just makes it tough. If you don't know the area, like you said, you got in touch with some people out there that gave you like basically a scouting report. But if you don't even try to do that, then you're going in blind and you've got a plan for it.
Yeah. And it's not like, it's the Mississippi Flyway, which is, Mississippi River. But just because it's the flyway doesn't mean all the birds are going to be there when you're going.
Yeah.
Now I'll give them this. There was just about every day you'd go out in the morning. We leave at 3, 4 in the morning. You'd go across that river, and it was to the point where if you were going fast across the river, you were going to be killing canvasbacks. So we had to back it down and just go slow all the way across the river just to get to the other side because they were rafted up by the hundreds of thousands, but they're not there during the day. So sure, some birds will be there, but they're not going to be what the flyway is like made out to be, I would guess you could say. I mean, we saw them crazy in the morning and then they're gone. They're wherever they're going, they're moving. They're not stopping to say hi.
Yeah. So then when you went out there, how were you planning for like what boats you guys were taking? If you don't know the terrain, like how did you figure out what the terrain might be that you guys were going to hunt, what boats you wanted to bring?
So this is where we started doing a little bit more research. The one guy we were talking to, his name is Chris. He said, this is you've got a water table in here. This is how deep it typically is. The water's down. It was, I want to say it was an average of 10 or 12 foot or something like that. So I wasn't too concerned about my 21-foot boat at the time. The guys had their 17-foot boats, one gator tail, one long tail, with a 40 horse on it. I want to say we brought one more. Yeah, we brought my other marsh boat.
Yeah, you brought yours, yeah.
So we had all 4 up there, and we didn't use all 4 every day. But we were just doing our research online, finding out what their state was providing with water reports, and they were doing a phenomenal job of keeping it updated. So they knew which locks of the river were at what height. And this was all information that one guy just was willing to give us to try to give us as much success as possible. I think they feel a little bit better about out-of-state guys coming in because they're only going to be there for a certain amount of time. They'll share the knowledge with them before sharing it with someone that's going to be hunting it every day.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, like, I think that we've both run into that around here where, like, people will ask us about, like, coming up here and hunting. And it's like, people that are from far away feel a little bit more comfortable being like, oh, yeah, you could just come hunt this spot for, like, this area for a few days and, like, you're good. But it's like, you start talking to other people and you're like, hey, do I really want to tell this person like something about where I hunt all the time? Like,
yeah,
that's why it always seems to me like it's like I understand like you're going out of town and like, but the way that like the culture is, it seems like people are very, tight-lipped when it comes to like giving information. But I think that if people are going to be doing like freelance trips, it's no different than asking somebody for permission at their field. Like, you just have to do it. You have to reach out to people and be like, hey, coming out this way, if you can give me any information. Like, I think that that's a huge part of trying to freelance a trip like that.
Yeah, and you will get lucky and find guys that are willing to share that knowledge. I think there was one guy that was consistently, giving me a call. And then you'd get some guys who are like, hey, the pool 7 or pool 9 or whatever we were in, it was doing pretty low right now. This is where I would suggest to go. And then you never hear from them again. Yeah. So you take that kind of knowledge, you investigate yourself, you go up, you scout. Typically, for Wisconsin, I think we left at 10 or 11 p.m. and that was an 8-hour drive. You get up there in the morning, you take a 2-hour nap, you drop the boats in, and you go up the river and see what's going on. See where people are posted up, and then make your educated guess from there and watch birds while you hunt.
Right. Well, and then you also did that 𝐦𝐤𝐤 trip last year too. Why don't you get into a little bit of that?
So, man, I'm trying to remember how I even figured out about that. Someone shared information. It might have been Mike Rule.
I think it was.
And he was saying, hey, Port Huron's a pretty good spot if you want to try to knock off some 𝐦𝐤𝐤. And that was one of the bucket list birds for me. So that's only a 3-hour drive or so. Right. So I, put the 21-foot Mariner on the back of the truck. Oh, this is actually a cluster because I had a guy welding the boat and he was supposed to already be done. And he waited till the last minute, ended up having an accident. I got the boat out of there, but I think I left at like 11 p.m., got up there at 3 in the morning, and then woke up at 7 and took whatever knowledge I could find from anybody and took it to one ramp. And we got to that ramp. The wind was honking. There were no other boat trailers there, and we're like, oh, this is weird. So we stopped and asked these fishermen, and we're like, hey, we're here to shoot 𝐦𝐤𝐤. We're from Ohio. We don't know what we're doing. Is there any chance you can give us some knowledge? And this guy looks around, and he's like, if I were you, I wouldn't be over here. We got some pretty nasty wind. You'll probably sink your boat. You should head down to the Black River and go up the Black River, go on the Canadian side on the river or on the St. Clair River, and then back over into the United States just to be safe. So we said, all right, thanks for the information. We drive down by the Black River, drop in over there, which there might have been one other trailer there. Maybe. I can't even remember. So we thought that was kind of weird too. We go down the Black River, get on the St. Clair. Turns it out to be a terrible wind. It was 30 mile an hour out of the south. Worst wind conditions for that river. We go into Lake Huron, and we post up at a spot that we're seeing birds move in and out, which was amazing to see 𝐦𝐤𝐤 like that. I've never seen so many, just one species of birds moving like that. So it's a really good current, 7 to 9 mile an hour current. We set an anchor. We throw a dozen decoys off the backside of the boat, and we're shooting 𝐦𝐤𝐤 that are kind of passing by, and maybe you get one that'll decoy. And then on the way back in, the wind picked up even more, so you're probably 35, 40 mile an hour out of the south against a current, and we end up in 6 to 8 footers in a Mariner, which is a thin-walled aluminum boat with a kid in the boat. So it's pretty nasty getting all the way back into the channel. Worst conditions I've ever been in. And we get back to the ramp, and we're just happy that we're alive with our 18 or 20 𝐦𝐤𝐤 or whatever that we've got. So a very similar situation. You get a hold of your buddies, and you're like, hey, who wants to come up and hunt these things, blah, blah, blah. And so we ended up with a really good hunt on the first day, but it was weird because we were like the only boat out there. So we go back, we eat our lunch, we hang around the house, talk about what we do the next day, and we wake up at 7 in the morning because we realized that we're not worried about getting a spot because these birds are just going to be in this area. It doesn't matter. So we get to the ramp, drop in. There's probably actually 7 or 8 boats down there on the second day. This is a Sunday. So the first day would have been a Saturday. We go up the river. It's nowhere near the conditions it was the day before. And we do the same thing, except we drop a line off of the boat, not tied to it. So then when we go to retrieve our birds, we just go right back to our line, grab our buoy, and anchor off. So it actually kind of helped us out that we had all these other groups up there shooting the 𝐦𝐨𝐬𝐷 because they would bounce in and out of all the boats. So it was very interesting and a different kind of hunting. And we end up shooting another 18 or 20 of those things. They stink, by the way. If I were to ever go back again, it's almost, or when I go back again, it's going to be a situation where I'm shooting trophy birds and I'm not going to overdo it because there's nothing I can do with these birds. They're just garbage. They smell terrible.
Yeah, I mean, I'm sure there's something you could do with them, but it'd be like when Shane talks about the geese where he's like, I put them in salt water for 2 weeks and I put them in buttermilk for a week. And it's like, at what point is it worth, at what point is it worth trying to make it edible when you could go up there and just focus on, like, if you wanted to get like a 3-bird mountain, you're like, I'm just going to shoot 3 really nice drakes. Like,
yeah. And that
or you find somebody that wants all the meat, then it's like, cool, you can have it.
Yeah, take it, please.
Yeah.
So I think you're right. The next time I go up, it'll basically be for the kids or for somebody that's never been able to harvest one. Right. And so they can throw it on their wall, and you can get that picky with these birds because you can see the tails off of them from a mile away. So, when I go up, this time I'll have a lot more knowledge and just be able to enjoy watching other people hunt these things based off of the success that I had the year before, which was phenomenal, and it got me a lot of experience on the water. But once again, I was relying on knowledge from other people that I wouldn't have met if it weren't for social media and reaching out and just asking the tough question of, hey, where do you shoot these birds? Right. And are you willing to share knowledge?
Yeah. Well, I think you can also like find somebody that wants to like go to an area that you've been to too. And then you can like share, trade knowledge too.
Yeah. Based off of what I learned, the 2 hunts that I was up there, I know how I can have better success next time. And I know that if there's a 40-mile-an-hour south wind, I'm probably not going to go out.
Yeah, but that's hard. That's another thing too about trying to plan these trips. And it's like, you said it when you're talking about Wisconsin, you said it when you're talking about this. And we had it when we went up to St. Clair, years ago, and we were doing a freelance trip up there. You can't plan for the weather. Like, you can if you want to do it where it's like close enough, but if you're trying to do something like you're talking about with this many people, and like, I want to get 10 people to go and all these people come in. You're like, we're doing it the first week of November. We're doing it the first week of December, whatever it is. It's like, you have to kind of roll the dice on the weather and then just make the best out of it.
Yeah. I think in most situations, the wind and the chop probably isn't going to be your biggest concern. I mean, you don't want a lot of heat though. Like if you've got a really warm, or like a warm front that comes through, I'd be more scared of that than I think the waves in most situations.
Well, I feel like if you've got the cold weather and you are in an area, like, you can find places to go based on the wind.
Yeah, exactly.
You can make that adjustment. But if you show up and it's like everything's 80 degrees, then it's just like when we went to Minnesota and we were filming out there, we started leaving and Sean's looking at, what the weather is there. And he's like, yeah, it's 65 there right now. And he's like, we might be in trouble. And it's like, you show up and like the first day was a little chilly and it moved some birds out. But then it's like, as the day goes on, it's 65, 70 degrees. And it's like, if you're trying to shoot geese, like the wind would have only helped us if we had more wind, but it's like we barely were able to make it work with the wet, like with the heat, the temperature. That's what screwed us.
Yeah. Yeah. The temperature is something that I'm more scared of than I think anything else, because that can completely ruin your trip to the point of like, should I just go back home and save my vacation for another day?
Yeah.
I don't know. I'm more likely to just risk the waves than I am the temperature.
Right. Well, and like when we go up to Owen Lake, it's like we have a couple spots that we can go if the wind's bad. And then, but the thing about a small lake too, like if you're going anywhere up north in one of the small lakes or whatever, or even Lake St. Clair, it's like you can find places to get out of the wind. But if you show up and it's warm, it's 60, 70 degrees. It's just like you said, it's not even worth. Like that would be the biggest thing that would bother me. And that's why I wouldn't be planning big like trophy trips or like things that like bucket list trips on opening weekend of regular duck. Like in the middle of October, it's so volatile. Like I think I would be looking like even November, these like anymore, it might be 65 degrees that first weekend in November. And it's like, what are you going to do?
Well, funny story about that. So when we did go up to St. Clair, whenever it was, we ended up shooting quite a few birds. We did phenomenal actually for in relation to the other guys that were there that we were talking to. And one of the guys that was with us was like, man, I got to bring my kid up. So he comes back up 2 weeks later and everything is frozen. It locked up pretty much overnight.
Yeah.
So, I mean, it just goes to show that the temperature can truly wreck a hunt like that quick. And that's why when we're planning these trips, we're trying to do it towards the beginning of November where the chances of locking up is low.
Right. Yeah. Well,
you'll risk.
Funny that you say that because when you mentioned that, I was telling you, some insight on Lake St. Clair from our trip up there. So we have that split in Ohio from the first 3 weeks or whatever, and then it splits for a week or two, and then it opens back up in November. So when that was like until this year, it's back to it, but like it was a hard like week where you couldn't hunt anything in our area because you couldn't hunt any of the zones or overlap them or anything. You might be able to go up to Michigan, which is what we did, but like so we planned it where it was like we're gonna go up, I think it was like the Wednesday during that period where you couldn't hunt anything. We're like, oh cool, we'll be able to go up there and hunt. And we get up there, and this is in October. I mean, like, this is the end of October, and it was 10 degrees up there.
Oh.
It was so cold. Like, my buddy had the aluminum floor in his boat, similar to yours, and it was so cold that the cold was radiating through the floor into our boots, and we went to, like, there's a hardware store, hardware bait, corner store, whatever. It's everything up there, general store basically. And dude, we're buying like hand warmers to put them in our boots. Like it was so cold to the point where it was absolutely miserable. And we don't get that anymore in November or in October. Like that, I remember that, and I was just like, I mean, we would be layout hunting and the boat had ice on it. And it's like, man, we don't get that anymore.
No, we don't.
Like it used to be like you would hunt. Like even when I was in college, it was like November was basically a wash because it was so cold, everything would freeze up. So it's like at that time, like I didn't have all the stuff that I do now to even try and make it work. But it's like when the marsh froze up, it was just like, well, I guess the season's over. I'm not even gonna give it a try. Like no birds in there, but it's like now it's changed so much that it's like the places that. Like when we were in Minnesota, Sean was saying like they filmed the show there 8 years ago or whatever, 5 years ago, and everything was frozen there. We were up there the exact same time. It was all frozen. They were hunting on the ice, like completely different situation than we're in now. But now they're telling us that it's going to be a cold winter and all that stuff. The same thing they said last year. So who knows?
yeah, you just deal with whatever cards they're throwing at you and hope for the best and pray to your duck gods or whoever you need to pray to. Uh,
Yeah.
that's all I do.
I mean, that's all you really can do.
Yeah.
So I guess moving forward, like in the next, like the upcoming years, like I know we got plans this year and like you got other trips, but like what have you learned on these trips that you're now making a priority when you're planning them going forward?
Well, so the Kansas trip, the first time that we went up there, we took a smaller marsh boat and it had one of those pot aluminum props on there. I think it was either the first or second hunt we had, it broke the prop. So we're like, oh, great. We have a spare. We're great. So I bring all my tools with me on all my hunts, impacts, sockets, everything, just to make sure that if I've got a breakdown, it's not going to send me all the way back home. So I brought my impact. I brought everything, spare prop, put it on there. My buddy was putting it on there, and as soon as I was like, hey, you probably don't want to ugga-dugga that thing, it snaps the second one, which was an aluminum pot metal prop again. So we lost that boat, and luckily one of the other guys was able to take both of us along the trip. But number one is always bring your tools and bring spare stuff that you can. Like big boats always got another prop in it. The little boat, I have a spare prop on that one. So tools and spare parts that you can, spark plugs, whatever, so you don't have to go all the way back home or it doesn't ruin you for days. And then I think the next biggest thing that we had was a spare winch strap. Last year, one of the guys was towing the boat all the way up to Wisconsin, and he was like, hey, man, something doesn't look right on the boat. So we pull over, and his strap is shredded. And, Shane was like, hey, don't worry about it. I have a spare. And I'm like, man, what kind of person just keeps a spare winch strap in their truck? And here it is. It's in a package. And, we NASCAR pit stopped it in a whole booth kind of situation and just ugga-dugga that thing back on there. And ever since then, I've got a spare winch strap in the back of the truck because I'm like, man, what if that happened to me? Sure, you can make it work with ratchet straps and whatever else you put in your truck, but that's one of those things that now I've got with me everywhere because if my boat flies off the back of the highway, I'm out for the trip. I'm probably out for a while.
Yeah, got a lot of money too.
Yeah, and things get really expensive when you're talking boats.
Well, and I think like even like I started doing after I got my big boat and I saw that it had a safety chain, like the hooks on the front, like on the front eyelet. Yeah. I started trying to put those on all of my boat trailers. So it's like you said, you lose, like, especially on a John boat, like on a big boat, it's not going to just fly off. But like if you have a John boat, 14, 16, whatever, like, I mean, it's just perfectly pitched on that trailer where it's like, as soon as the wind catches it, it's not strapped down. It's just going to flip backwards. So like, that's one of those things, like safety wise, I feel like spare tires on the trailer, have actually like a backup tie down for at least the front of the boat, the back kind of whatever. I mean, like it might bounce around a little bit, but generally the motor is heavy enough that it keeps it secured on the trailer. And then like, I always bring extra wiring stuff because I've had lights go out on trailers and I don't want to get screwed on that. Like you said, I always bring tools, like especially on my old truck, I had that toolbox on the side of it. And now my new one, I have a toolbox like in the wheel well. And so it's like, I'm just going to keep, like when I kind of have like a toolbox in each boat with spare stuff in it. And then I want spare tools and stuff like that for, I mean, even like I'm going to end up getting one of those little like pot jacks. I don't remember what they're called.
Oh, like a bottle jack?
Bottle jack, yeah. And like have that because it's like you don't want to put a full-size jack in your truck. But like those jacks that come with the trucks or like any car suck too. So it's like having something like that, you get stuck on the side of the road and it's like what am I going to do now?
Yeah, that's a fair point. You bringing up the electrical stuff because, man, I had really bad luck last year. I ended up taking the boat out. This was not during a trip. This was around here. Both bilge pumps were frozen, and of course that boat was leaking. So I make it out of the river. I'm like, hey, something doesn't feel right. I look behind. I've got water back there. Everything's frozen. I put the boat back on the trailer because I had to go all the way back to Walmart, grab some wiring stuff, because I think it burned up the both bilge pumps because I didn't have them individually fused. So I had to buy new bilge pumps. I had my buddy drive my truck on the highway while I was back in the boat, swapping everything out. I was like, as soon as we get back there, we got to drop back in the water. So we get back in the water. The bilge pumps are back by the time we drop in. And then we get out there. I'm still leaking, of course. And the hose is frozen. And I'm like, oh, great. This just really can't get any worse. I had to pull the hose off. I peed in the hose to get it thawed back out, put it back on. And we actually had a phenomenal hunt, but we didn't get set up until like 8 o'clock. And there were birds landing while I'm over here, I'm peeing in this hose. And I'm like, dude, this is just terrible. But the fact that we could come up with an emergency plan that quick, still get set up, still have a phenomenal hunt, have laughs, and then be able to tell stories about it later makes it worth it because it's just the determination and not giving up when it is either a local hunt or something that's, all over the country or whatever. Just not.
Yeah, I mean, I think it's the same mentality, whether it's local or this thing too. Like, it's nice that there's generally like an O'Reilly's or an AutoZone or a Walmart, like almost everywhere that you can get that stuff.
Yeah.
Like even like my father-in-law, he has a story where they went up to St. Clair and they were fishing and he didn't grab his boat key when they left. And he was like, they get up there and he's like, crap, I forgot that boat key. And his buddy's with him. And he's just like, man, don't worry about it. He's like, stop at this AutoZone. And like, they literally on the way up there stopped. They bought a new key. And then like, he just went up there, cut it, spliced in a new key and motor fired right up. But it's like, most people would be like, well, if I don't have my key, I can't go at all. And he's just like, don't worry about it. Like, we'll just put in a whole new key. You got to think that quick,
Yeah, it's nice when you can have somebody in the group that kind of is in that same mentality too. Like, hey man, we can do it. Let's go. It's not just yourself with that mentality. It's put yourself around people that want to go out and help and hunt and everything that you want to do.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, I do have a story about something going bad when we were up. So it was the first year we went up to Houghton Lake. We were layout hunting. We get up there and I had that 93 Johnson. Like, it's just old, worn down. Everything in the boat was old. And I don't even know if I've told you this story before, but so we get up there. It was like the first day. I think we were up there for 2 days. And the first day, my shifter cable breaks. And so like we're layout hunting. Like, I can't reverse. Mm-hmm. I can only go forward. And I can't even put it in neutral. Like, we're starting the boat in drive.
Oh.
So as soon as you start it, it's going. It's like a mud motor. It's just going. And so like the only way that you can stop the boat, like to swap people out, is you would come up, you'd shut off the motor, and then they would just catch you. There's 0 wind that day. So like you could just kind of like coast in with the boat. And we're hammering redheads. Like, there's a one time where like we can't stop redheads from coming into the decoys. And so we somehow make it through that whole hunt. I go to a local boat shop and I'm like, I need a shifter cable for this. They give it to me. It's the wrong size. I go back. I get another one. It's the right size. I get it swapped in. The next day, we get out there and we're setting up. And I'm not even out of the decoys from putting the first person into the layout boat. And I can no longer adjust the throttle. It's in drive, but I no longer have throttle. And it snapped that cable too. So we had to have somebody sitting on the transom with the cowling off, running the throttle while the other person's steering. We did that for an entire hunt.
Wow.
And I put that boat on the trailer and I said, I'm out of here.
Well,
But it was one of those things that it's like, I mean, in the heat of the moment, you're like, okay, so if that broke, what does still work? Like, it still was going in dry, so we were like, okay, it could be worse. Like, but if we had broke both of them while I mean, it was lucky that they didn't both break at the same time.
oh yeah,
And somebody would have, I guess somebody could have been sitting at the back and like pushed it in the drive and then but like then you'd still have the 2-person deal and it just would have been a gigantic pain in the ass.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. I mean, you want to keep everyone's safety as your priority at all times. But right after you think about someone's safety, you need to think of how can we get out of here and with what we have. And, you know, I learned last year that it was great to have tow insurance. So I'll continue to invest in that. But I think being able to be level-headed and make sure that everyone's safe first and then worry about what you can do with what you have is best. And if you can continue to hunt, do it safely. But yeah, I mean, just deal with what the cards or with whatever cards you have.
Yeah. Well, and you saying that too, if anybody's listening to this and you don't have Boat US tow insurance, it's tow of all inland lakes. And you also get roadside assistance on your trailer. Buy it. It's what, $85?
Yeah, I think they might have increased to like 109 or something like that, which
whatever.
By far cheaper than a tow experience. Last year, my tow experience would have cost me thousands. And
right, it's like $1,200 for like a couple mile tow.
Yeah, I was 9 miles out, and they said something like $5,000. I was like, oh my gosh. Yeah. So yeah, $110. I don't have to worry about it ever again. Yeah, it's worth it.
And they'll bring you fuel too.
Fuel and jump starts, I think.
Yeah, I think you're right. I mean, it's just peace of mind.
Yeah.
So if nobody has that, get it now. If you're on the lake, even if you're on the lake like twice a year, like you don't want that one time that you're out there to cost you $30,000. Just buy it. Yeah.
It's not worth it. Just, it's not worth not having it.
Oh, of course not. No. Well, buddy, you've already come on here, and normally I'd ask you what hobby you would take on if you could take on another hobby, but we've already had that discussion. So
I do have a new one for you though.
Well, okay, here we go. We're doing it.
So if I could get into something, I would really like to invest myself into whiskeys and finding out like what kind of whiskeys I like. I would love a whiskey selection and be like, hey, that's good stuff. Or that's not good stuff. Do you want it? I don't know. If I can have a nice selection of it and just enjoy myself and have a couple of drinks and
cigars.
Well, I have smoked cigars, but it's going to be whiskeys and, I don't know. I would like to get into that. I think it'd be a good time.
I mean,
there you go.
At some point you'll move away from twisted teas and then you'll just get into whiskeys.
Why can't you have both though?
You can have both. I'm sorry I even said that.
Yeah, you should never say that.
Well, buddy, I'll give you a minute to let everybody know where they can find you.
Well, Facebook, you usually see me scrolling through, checking out everybody else's duck boats, but name's Brian Evans. You can catch me on Instagram. I couldn't tell you what my handle is though. But you're more likely to find me on Facebook, and feel free to always reach out with any questions that you may have. I'm no professional. I work with what I got, and typically my boats work out for me and hopefully for others. So if you ever have questions, feel free to ask. And or if you're looking to get out of state, I'll give you everything I've got information-wise, and I'd hope that somebody listening to this can tell me where I can go out and have good success with eiders next year.
Well, we'll see if somebody reaches out to you then.
Yeah, so I appreciate you having me on. Always love talking to you.
Yeah, you too, buddy. Thank you for coming on.
Oh, thanks for having me.